Yo guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, or welcome if you've never been here before. So I've just jumped on this morning to make my weekly forecast, and this will be the forecast for the week commencing the 24th of January and ending on the 28th of January. So before we get started with the forecast, I will just draw your guys' attention to the written version of this forecast. So every week I do make the video version, but that's always based on this written version of the forecast. And I will be linking this written version in the description. So if you guys are interested in the written version of this forecast, then just check out the link in the description. Alright, so let's get started. So Nzdusd I'll start with. So what we've been looking at the last few weeks on Nzdusd, we was in this bearish trend originally. We then had this first bullish breaker structure. Now, last week I actually thought that this didn't break structure, and I'm not sure if the feed's changed or if I just made a mistake, but we can see that this actually did close above this high, so we did actually have that two breaks of structure to the high, which confirmed a bullish trend transition on the daily for me. So following this bullish intent, following that, last week I was looking at buys on Nzdusd. Now, considering this break, in theory, it would have made sense for the buys to come out of here, and that obviously hasn't happened. We've had the violation of this law here, so we do now have that bearish break structure on the daily, which does give us bearish intent on Nzdusd. But technically, until we see a second break of structure or until we see this law violated, it's still definitely possible that we will see that bullish move playing out, following through with these two bullish breaks of structure. So firstly, I'll just talk about that daily bullish thesis. Alright, so the original bullish breaker structure came from this candle here. Now, if we go and look at this on a lower time frame, so we can just look at it on the hourly, what we've got is basically this refinement here. So we've got the imbalance there, which was in place from last week, and then we've got a wick trick at below, which grabs liquidity below there. So in terms of where would price react from within that whole daily candle, I think it does make sense that price will come out of this refinement here, which is the refinement with imbalance above it. Also, looking at the structure from last week, this is where the daily breaker structure to the low is, but if you think about it, what we had under these areas here is liquidity, so it does make sense for price to essentially come down below this liquidity, which is what I spoke about last week, before then continuing higher. So from my perspective right now, considering we've got this order block here, we've also come below this liquidity, I do think it makes sense for us to come up from here, and then potentially we could just continue to make new highs on the daily. But we can't ignore what's been going on in the shorter term on the 4-hour and on the daily. So going into the start of next week, I will be expecting some type of bullish reaction from this. So I do think it's fine to buy out of here. Now, whether that's just going to take us up to this 4-hour, which I'll discuss in a minute, or the daily, or if it is going to be taking us all the way into new highs, that remains to be seen really. But I do think that there is demand in this area, and we did have that imbalance there, so there's definitely been institutional activity there. So for me, we've definitely got a valid buying opportunity coming out of this area to start the week off. But that said, if we do just violate this area, then I will be taking pretty much a bearish thesis on the pair overall. So you know, we've just got to see if we're going to start the week off by respecting this area or by violating it. Now, not considering that situation, what we do have is this bearish break on the daily, and that came from this area up here. So if we are going to be seeing the bearish thesis just continuing to play out, it would make sense for price to retrace up to this area and then sell off away from there. So basically following this line here. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that because we have had that bearish breaker structure. So even though we could follow through to the upside from here, it would also make sense for us to follow that bearish breaker structure and go further down with price. Now, looking at a 4-hour, what we basically had is this breaker structure here. So the actual breaker structure is from there, and that basically coincides with the daily breaker structure. But the only difference is that the daily point of interest for sells is up here, whereas the 4-hour point of interest for sells is here. So going into next week, firstly, I'll be looking at a bullish reaction from this area. And then when we do get up to this 4-hour point of interest, I do think that we could see the sells coming through. So I'll definitely be open to selling out of there. And if we do see that, I think it'd make perfect sense. We'll just continue with the 4-hour bearish structure, and then we can break the daily low. So that's definitely a possibility. And then if we do violate this, we're still technically have that bearish intent on the daily. So if we do violate the 4-hour area, then we could still see sells coming in from up here. And like I say, going into the start of the week, I'll be looking for buys just coming out of this low here. And then whether, where we target, I'd probably be looking to take partials here. And then if we do get past there, I'll take more partials here. And then, yeah, if we do break again, we probably will come up to here because we've got this imbalance. But for what we're looking at right now, I do think that that's quite ambitious because we are literally in a sell structure on the 4-hour, and we also have that bearish intent on the daily. So we'll just have to see what happens with Nzdusd this week, but there would be the 3 opportunities that I'm forecasting for this week. And yeah, it's, I wish there could be more certainty with this pair, but for me, that's the 3 opportunities that I see potentially playing out. So we've just got to see what happens and how price actually reacts off these different areas. Alright, so moving on to euro dollar. And guys, if you do like this video, or if you want to hear more about my Forex journey, then please do subscribe to the channel, because it really does mean a lot to me. And I really appreciate all the support that I get. So please do subscribe if you enjoy these videos. Alright, so on euro dollar, on the daily. So we've had the first breaker structure, then we have the second breaker structure. So that's basically confirmed the daily bearish bias, bullish bias, sorry. It's also confirmed daily bullish order flow. So following that, what we basically have is pretty much, I mean, you could say the order block is anywhere within that whole candle, but obviously we've retraced quite deep now. So at this point, for me, the order block is somewhere down here. So following that daily 2 breaks of structure, it makes perfect sense for us to see that third breaker structure coming through on the daily. So for me, from a daily perspective, I'm definitely bullish on euro dollar. And like I've been speaking about the last few weeks, we've got imbalance up here. So for me, it makes sense for price to come up, fill this imbalance before we then potentially do see that more aggressive sell move coming into the market. Now, looking at the 4-hour bar, what we've got is a bearish breaker structure. So originally we broke structure here, and now we broke structure again. So we do have, a structural transition to take us bearish on the 4-hour. So that can't be ignored. So despite what's going on the daily, and I do think that that daily is quite likely to continue playing out, the 4-hour is giving us that bearish bias at the minute. So for me, going into the start of the week, the first thing I'll be looking at is basically to sell out of this area following the order block, which caused this breaker structure. And then, yeah, personally, I would expect that we are going to see price coming out of the daily for buys, but you never know. And this 4-hour order block could just be the start of a larger bearish move, which transitions the daily into a bearish trend. So I definitely like sell out of this order block going into the start of next week. But that said, it could just continue because we have already technically reacted from the daily order block. So it could just continue. If that happens, then I'll look to follow the 4-hour structure to take buys following the new bullish 4-hour structure. But for me, right now, and what we're actually seeing is this 4-hour bearish order block. So what I think we'll probably see is price will start in here at the start of the week, then we'll see that bearish move to take us to break structure again on the 4-hour. And then within this whole daily area here, I can see this wick here, So for me, in terms of the most ideal refinement of the daily order block, it would be that wick. So what I'd expect most likely is that we will see that next break structure on the 4 hour, and then if we are going to be going bullish, we're going to be reacting out of this wick to then take us bullish following that daily bullish bias. So for me, there's basically two opportunities this week. There's a sell out of there, and then there's the buy out of this daily area here. And like I say, if we do see this break coming through straight away, then we could just continue up and we could see this as the mitigation of the daily order block. But until we see that 4 hour break structure, for me, we do have that bearish bias on the 4 hour, so I'll be following that until we see it broken. And yeah, I do think it's worth noting that we've basically got the liquidity from this trend line here, so that liquidity should be taken out in theory. I mean, it does make sense that the institutions will want to come up and take this liquidity out, even if they were going to go lower down. So for me, I am expecting that bullish move to come in at some point. Alright, but that's euro dollar. So pound dollar. So pound dollar is actually pretty clean at the minute this week. So on the daily, we got that bullish breaker structure that I've been speaking about the last few weeks, and that bullish breaker structure originates from this area down here. So looking at the price now, I mean, well, while there is definitely demand in these zones here, considering the imbalance and the fact that we have an order block down here, looking at price right now, and we've got quite a decent bit of momentum building, I do think that it will make sense to see price coming all the way down here at this point, because we've also got liquidity built up under this ascending channel on the 4 hour. So for me, I think it makes sense for us to see price coming down to this daily order block at this point. So following that, even though we've got the overall bullish intent, I am taking the bearish bias on the pound dollar this week. So looking at the 4 hour, last week I was looking at this order block for buys. We got a small reaction off it, but then we did break the structure to the low. What we then saw is prices retraced up, tapped into this order block to mitigate, so that's this mitigation here, and then we broke structure again, leaving behind this candle here, which has a huge wick and imbalance below. So for me at this point, we've basically seen that 4 hour structural transition into bearish. We've also got the 4 hour order flow transition into bearish. So it's just a case really for me this week on pound dollar of waiting for this retracement and then just looking to continue for sells out of that area. And then I think we can really be targeting like pretty much that daily order block, because there's all this liquidity built up here and we've got the imbalance there. So for me it makes sense that price will just continue down, but we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, for me this week, the only thing I'm forecasting is this 4 hour sell move, and if we do then see this area broken, then I'll reassess the situation. But until that happens, the only thing I'm interested in is this sell move out of the 4 hour on these higher time frames anyway. Alright, so moving on to AUD USD. So AUD USD, we've got this daily point of interest that I've been speaking about for a few weeks. So we basically broke structure, then we're going up here correctively, and what I'm thinking, or what I was thinking, is that we're going to come into this daily point of interest and then we'll start to sell off from there. But to be fair, and what you've got to consider is that there is also the possibility that, I mean, it's possible that that candle is basically an over refinement, and the whole daily order block really is this leg, this bullish move here, which then causes a break of structure. So it doesn't necessarily have to come up into this exact candle, even though that would be ideal. We could just see price start to go down now following that and just continuing down. But that said, for me it does still make sense that we will see some more bullish price action before we do eventually sell off from there. But like I say, we could also just see price melting down. So that's why for me, I'm going to be following the 4 hour going into this week. So on the 4 hour currently, just looking at the two most recent breaks of structure, we had a break of structure to the low here, and now we've had that second break of structure to the low here. So that's left behind this point of interest for sells. And for me, going into the start of next week, I'm going to be looking at selling out of this area here. So most likely what I think we'll just see that little retracement coming in, and then we'll see the sell move to come following the 4 hour. But with that said, if we do break this area, then like I say, it does still make sense for us to come higher into the daily point of interest, and we do still have that imbalance there which still hasn't been filled. So if we do start to see that bullish structure coming in, then I'll be more than happy to take buys to take us back up there, and then eventually take sells out of there. But looking at what we've got right now on the 4 hour, I am just interested in sells out of this point of interest until we see that point of interest violated, and then we can take it from there. So yeah, AU this week, we've got sells out of this 4 hour area, and then if we do get up there, we can look again for sells out of the daily area following that daily bias. But like I say, considering that we have gone quite deep into that overall leg there, it could be that we are just going to now see the bearish price action coming in, and that's why I'm interested in selling out of this 4 hour area. Alright, so that's pretty much AUD USD this week. It's not too complicated, I don't think. So moving on to Euro Pound. Alright, so Euro Pound, looking at the 2-day, and it's the same thing on the daily. What we've had is we're in this bearish order flow overall. So we had break structure, a break structure, and what we're looking at is literally just continuing this bearish order flow. So for me, the last break of structure we had actually came from this candle up here, and then I've got these 2 refinements marks on, like I've had in the last few weeks. So I think what really makes sense on the Euro Pound is that we're going to retrace up back into here, and then we'll sell off from there to break structure again. And with that, we can take out this higher time frame liquidity below all these relative equal lows. So from a daily perspective and the 2-day perspective, what I'm looking at is this retracement up here, and then we can sell off. So taking that thesis into the 4 hour time frame, we've actually got a pretty nice situation that's set up. So here we've got accumulation, and I don't use this concept all the time, but we've got the accumulation there, which is the institutions theoretically accumulating buy orders before they then do the bullish price action move. Then what we've got here is the liquidity grab or the manipulation below the accumulation. So following this, what we should expect is basically just to see this retracement to mitigate this order block, and then we can see that bullish move that I've been talking about coming into the market. Now, just in terms of, what's actually happening with the breaker structure, so we've basically had this liquidity grab under here, and then we've got a 4 hour bullish breaker structure. So for me on Euro Pound at the start of this week, it's simply a case of just looking to follow this bullish breaker structure, and I'll look to buy out of there, and then hopefully we can take price up to this daily point of interest that I've been talking about. So that's what I personally see happening on Euro Pound, but obviously you never know, so we'll see what happens with that. Alright, so Pound Yen. So Pound Yen, we've had that bullish breaker structure that I spoke about the last few weeks. We have now violated that first base that I was speaking about. So in terms of where we could look to buy from on the Pound Yen, we've got this base here which has imbalance, and then we've got the order block at the low. Now for me, it's similar with Pound Dollar. Like if Pound Dollar is going to go to that lower order block, then I'll expect Pound Yen also to come down to this lower order block at this point, and we are seeing that momentum kicking in after the order flow and structural transition on the hourly time frames. So for me now, really, I am expecting price to come all the way down here. It's possible that we'll see a reversal from here, but I think it's more likely that this will get used as like a reaction point to basically pull back into like a 4 hour order block, and then we'll see the push down to take us down here before then we maybe will eventually come back up. So right now on the Pound Yen, that's pretty much what I'm looking at, but we'll have to see what happens with that. So in the shorter term, I think short term is really what's more important right now on Pound Yen. We've been following this break structure as I predicted the other week. We had the reaction off that point of interest at the high, and then now we've broken structure again a second time. and then we reacted off what I marked on last week, the 5-hour point of interest up here, which is basically this candle here, and then we've broken structure again. So what I'm expecting really is just a continuation of this bearish price action coming into the start of next week. So at some point, either once we've tapped into there or before, I'll expect a retracement back up to this area, and then when we do get up to that area, I will be anticipating a sell-off from that area. So that's pretty much the main thing that I'm looking at on pound yen. I mean, I do think in terms of this counter trend move, that probably will come out of this area here, because that is a valid demand zone, and we've got imbalance there, and we've got the order block. So I do think that this area will probably have a reaction from it, and whether that's just going to be the counter trend, or potentially it could just continue as with higher following the daily bias, because that is the daily base. I do see that as a possibility, but for me, really, I am expecting this bearish continuation. So if you were going to take a trade out of there, then I'd say it'd be wise to really just be targeting this area up here, and then expecting that sell to come through. But yeah, that's pretty much pound yen for this week. Just targeting sells out of this area, and then we can see what happens from there. Alright guys, so if you did enjoy this forecast, then please do subscribe to the channel, because I do put time into this every weekend so that you guys can watch it. And also, if you want the written version, then do just check out the written version, which is linked in the description. I've also got a lot of other good resources linked in my description, so please do check out the resource in the description if you guys want help with trading psychology, or if you want to find out where I learned my strategy from. Alright guys, so thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. I hope you guys all have a safe trading week and a profitable trading week. I hope you guys all stick to your trading plans. Cheers guys.